Welcome to Keith Knight Don't Tread on Anyone and the Libertarian Institute. Today I'm joined by Justin Tosi, co-author of Why It's Okay to Mind Your Own Business. Mr. Tosi, where is the best place for people to find this book?
Amazon works. There's a Rutledge said there may be a discount there sometimes, but I am not great at like tracking the deals on my own book. But hey, wherever you can find it, we're just happy to have anybody read it.
Awesome. Links will be in the description below. Mr. Tosi, what is commencement speech morality?
Oh, cool. Yeah. So commencement speech morality is like, as you might guess, if you've ever watched like a graduation speech, these colleges bring in celebrities, politicians, major figures in our culture to come and tell their graduating students and their parents how this is going to be the group of young people that finally gets it right, solves all of our problems. This very high-minded outlook that advances a particular conception of morality that Brandon and I feel pretty uneasy about. We think it's kind of unrealistic, disconnected from not just from how most people live their lives, but how they ought to think about what a good life is. So I can tell you more about it, but that's kind of the general idea. Is we think these poor young people are getting really bad advice about how to think about what makes a life worth living, and we want to correct that with the book.
So what, if anything, is wrong with Michelle Obama coming out and saying, you guys can change the world. It's up to you. Put yourself out there. You only have one life to live. What, if anything, is wrong with that message to the youth?
Yeah. So we don't want to say that there's nothing good about some of these ideas, right? Like it is good to solve problems. It is good to be ambitious. It is good to try and get out there and make a difference. A lot of things can go wrong when you try to do that, but also, like I said, this sort of overlooks a lot of things in life that are really important in favor of like a few kind of central claims. So, to try to put a little bit more flesh on this idea of what commencement speech morality is, according to this outlook, moral life is really simple. There aren't a lot of competing demands. Like the thing that's important is these big like worldwide problems that are like society level shortcomings, right? And being a good person is just about dropping everything and getting out there, knocking on doors, like Michelle Obama says. Make every issue your issue. Everything is your business. So there's a nice line. An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so, the commencement speech moralist kind of takes this even further. Look, every problem is your business. And the more important it is, like the bigger the problem is, the better you are for heading out there and tackling it, because on this way of thinking about morality, the most important thing in life is solving big problems concerning other people who you don't necessarily know, and then finally, on this view, I said the idea is like this is finally we have a generation of good people, right? Like these are the people who finally really care. All the rich old people like us, we're too far gone. But these young people, they have good intentions, and that's the thing that's really in short supply. We need to take people who mean well and just throw them at these long-standing major social issues, and because they have good intentions, surely things will just work out. They're going to figure it out because they're pure of heart. And they'll go out there and make the world a better place in ways that all these old and ill-intentioned people just couldn't be bothered to for some reason. Okay, so yes, so what's wrong with this? Well, I mean, everything I just said is false, at least to the degree of importance that it's stressed and the weight that it's assigned by commencement speech moralists. Moral life is not simple. There are lots of moral life is actually about conflict between competing values, right? So sure, it is good to try to help people, even if you don't know those people. We don't deny that, but there are also people in your life who you know better than anyone else. You can help them more effectively than anyone else can. There are problems that really are not your business, right? Maybe because you don't know enough, maybe you don't have standing to address those problems, and maybe because they're just not the kind of problem that other people should be intervening in, pushing other people around to do something about. Solving problems is important, but it's not the only thing that matters. You know what else matters? Reading to your kids, like building a good home for your kids and having kids in the first place. These are all good things to do with your life. So bigger is better, commencement speech moralists say. Not necessarily. I mean, look, nobody really believes this principle that gets trotted out sometimes, that you should only work on like the biggest and most important thing, right? That's just not true. You should work on the thing that you can do something about, that you're good at, right? That draws on your talents and works within the relationships that you have with other people. And then, good intentions. Hey, I like a nice guy or gal as much as the next person. Good intentions just don't matter that much, really, for achieving actually good results. A goodwill is not the only good thing in the world. It's actually like the cheapest commodity known to man. Everybody thinks that they mean well, right? And everybody, in a sense, does mean well, right? So, when we talk more about this, the book goes into this in great detail. But look, what is missing from the world is not people who mean well and like want to help. Everybody wants to help, right? And the fact that you might fail to help someone does not mean that you don't care. It doesn't mean that you have bad intentions or you're a bad person. So, as inspiring as it is to hear people talk this way, it just gets a lot wrong, and we think, even if it's not, it doesn't make for like great straightforward speeches. A more I don't know, realistic, comprehensive accounting of the things that matter in life are more helpful. Make up a more helpful way to think about how to set out in the world and do something good than commencement speech morality offers.
Yeah, I look at all the great things in life, airplanes, computers, cell phones, microphones, books, and it's not the result of, well, we all got together and everyone's opinion was heard and we all took a vote. It's like a few experts worked as hard as they could and offered their products voluntarily. That's what makes things good. Not like I can imagine a leftist airline where all the passengers and the pilot have an equal say in how the plane is flown. Because anything outside of that is unegalitarian, and that's not fair. We all need to be constantly giving our opinions on everything. Oh my God, imagine how miserable. Thank God they don't actually believe it. And it's just this shallow, ridiculous Jill Stein belief. Jill Stein said that the problem with government is we need to tax more. Government only gets $6.2 trillion every single year to spend. She goes, we got to start taxing the rich. These bastards have just not done anything. We need people with good intentions. She is exactly who you describe as the pure-hearted in this book. So here is Jill Stein. Here is this Bernie Sanders, AOC, Barack Obama position briefly. What we need is to elect good people, people who represent the people, not the donor class. These people will have the right intentions, focusing on the well-being of the masses, giving them a better life. What, if anything, is wrong with this idea? that it's actually the people, the masses, who need to be represented as opposed to a select few when it comes to politics. We need to get more people represented. That's the problem.
Okay. Wow. A lot in that. So let me start answering. I'm probably going to forget some things, and you can tell me you didn't answer this part, and you'll be right. So be on your toes, Keith. Right. One thing that goes wrong here is on this really simple way of looking at the world. There's a lot going on with Jill Stein, but people who take this outlook in general think, the attitude seems to be like you can only have two things that go wrong. One is you don't have good people in charge, right? And you got to have, pure intentions, or you didn't spend enough money, right? And that's just not right. Look, like those can be sources of problems, but that's not what's going on most of the time, right? Like there are just not that many bad actors, right? I mean, there are some, but that's not the general account of why a problem goes unsolved, right? It's because it's like hard to coordinate people's efforts, right? So you can have lots of well-intentioned people who, just face conflicting incentives, right? Or they can't share information in the right way. Or maybe the nature of the information is just that no one has it, right? It's just distributed, so you've got like a Hayek problem, right? Of knowledge not being in the right hands, just can't be collected in that way, and so you're trying to address it through the wrong kind of institution or wrong set of rules, or something like that. And then this sort of this money thing, or like the government just needs more resources. This attitude. So we do the thing that people in our circle usually is repeat this line from Adam Smith because it's just right. Like you don't solve problems by just like begging people and like appealing to their good nature. I mean, sometimes you can get a little bit of a boost here and there, but like at the end of the day, this is a system that has to run with normal human beings in roles where they're making decisions that affect everyone. So you have to incentivize them in the right way, and so the easiest way to do that, given human cognitive hardware, is to make our incentives that are about like whether we are able to survive and thrive in life, make them align with pro-social actions, right? So pay people for making decisions that make everyone else better off, even if that's not on their mind. Now, the advantage of this is if you think about your job and your role in life in the right way, you can also realize this anyway. Like, look, I'm not doing the most emotionally satisfying thing, right? I'm not on the front lines, like feeding the starving child or whatever, but you are nonetheless like part of a system that, if you zoom out and look at a result of the entire thing working as designed, even if you might have individual people feeling like, my job is bullshit, or I don't see the value in what I do. Like you're part of an organization or like a big enough system that is lifting people out of poverty at a rate that no alternative system of organization has come even close to doing. So this is another cost of this way of thinking about the world is you make people depressed unless they feel like a superhero. And there are just not enough roles like that to go around once you have a society that's bigger than like 30 people, right? Like we're built to appreciate a social structure where everybody who matters in the world as far as you can tell, and you can see directly like the thing that you do helps them and it feels good. But there are a lot of people in the world, a lot more than 30, a lot more than 300 or 500 or whatever other ceiling anthropologists are putting on societies that can work when this is what's motivating you to do your part. And we've got to adapt to that, right? So giving speeches where we're appealing to this extremely small scale set of cognitive resources to make people try to do good in the world is not helping, right? It's just confusing. It's setting people up both to fail and also to be really frustrated and to feel like the world is beyond redemption when it's not. We can be a lot more optimistic than that. Anyway, all right. So what did I miss, Keith?
Yep.
I'm sure I missed half of your question.
You covered everything. That was good, because the reason that I love that part about it makes people feel small. They will literally say, "I care about the little guy." It's like, okay, name the name of someone who you consider a little guy. How that is more belittling to the middle class and the worker and the proletariat than anything I've heard conservatives or libertarians ever say. Like you said, I have more respect for people who work at Amazon and Goodwill, who play a vital role in giving people access to products and services that our great grandparents never could have dreamed of, than any of these. I have a new plan for Medicaid. Oh, all this stuff. LBJ's Great Society. We don't have time for it. We got to stick to the issue. So let's say we could have commencement speech morality be it's important for all of us to organize to increase the federal minimum wage. The mind your own business ordinary morality would say, look for ways you could increase the wage you demand on the market. If I want to mind my own business and increase the amount of money that I can get to improve my life and lead by example, what are some things I can do to increase my power?
Yeah, good. Well, I mean, so look, I mean, one thing to say here is, it's kind of the wrong question to think about like feeling powerful yourself, right? I mean, I understand you're thinking in terms of like market power and stuff, but you make a difference by working, by people don't want to hear this, but being a cog, because you are a cog, right? Like we're all cogs, like in a bigger machine. Like find a way to make that machine work better, right? Look, if someone is willing to pay you, obviously you can find exceptions to this, right? But if you've got a well-designed society with reasonable system of incentives, if you can find someone to pay you more to do something, that is a sign that what you're doing has value for the world, right? Right. Someone wants to pay you more to do X kind of work rather than Y kind of work because it's making other people better off. Now, the person who's willing to pay you, they might be thinking that way, or they might just be thinking, I need to make more money or whatever. But the reason the system is successful is because they don't have to think, how can I make people better off? Because once you start thinking outside of your kind of like way of playing a valuable role in the system, you're back to thinking in terms of like what works in like a small scale hunter gatherer or like early agricultural society, right? Where like what is going to feel make you feel powerful and make a difference that you can appreciate immediately and see it happen. It's not that has no role in the world anymore, but like in terms of like helping a lot of people who are very distant from you, it just sort of doesn't work that way anymore, right? Like that's all low hanging fruit is picked a long time ago, right? And replaced by a big society-wide machine in which you do the most good by doing things that have nothing to do with good intentions necessarily, right? By just doing your job and being good at it and feeling so find a way. I guess it's a very roundabout way of answering your question. If what you want to do is make a difference, find a way like frame your work in a way that like makes it feel meaningful to you, right? Because you'll work harder, your firm will be happier with you, you'll probably do a better job, and even though you might not see it, you're making a lot of distant people much better off too.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that I noticed in my last 3 jobs, the primary reason people got let go was because of attendance, something that is almost completely in your control. I always have books on me, so I have no problem showing up to work 20, 30 minutes early every day, not clocking in, but getting some solid Justin Tosi reading in before the day starts. Um, I just love the concept of how there's no contradiction between pursuing my own self-interest, not worrying about others, and only getting money from them if they see value in the product or service that I'm providing. So you end up harmonizing this social cooperative mechanism. So the very thing that politicians say they give us, the well-being and social cooperation, it's antithetical to social cooperation if you can coerce someone into funding your operation, taxation, and it's actually productive to voluntarily offer things. That's what. Do you know who Bert Folsom is? Uh, he wrote The Myth of the Robber Barons. The great lesson from the book is that a lot of these industrialists, Vanderbilt with steamships and railroads, Carnegie with steel, Rockefeller with oil, the Wright brothers with their airplane, James J. Hill with his railroad, in their own self-interest that they were pursuing, they made millions and millions of people better off and drastically lowered the price of what they were selling, not because they were so nice, because they wanted something that a lot of people could buy. So that was how they drastically improved the standard of living of many people. So I just think this is so vitally important. Are you familiar with that most kids won't even show up to work and then blame the system and racism and society and all this stuff? Give these kids a real commencement speech. Is there anything else we can do to make ourselves more valuable besides show up on time and ask for on-the-job training?
That's good. I the name Folsom rings a bell. I've probably heard people talk about that book or related ideas, but I haven't read it myself. Maybe I should take a look. That's great. Yeah, on showing up. I mean, I guess this sort of goes to if we tell people, like, sort of denigrate what's close to you and just think about the think all the time about having a worldwide impact. Like, should it be any surprise that they don't want to show up, right? I mean, like, it makes it feel, understandably, if you're working within that frame, you're gonna feel like, well, showing up for my job, I mean, that's not really what matters. But you got to show up to do it. I mean, like, okay, sure, you can work from home and some things, but like, you still got to do your job. So I mean, the inspirational speech I give these people is, I mean, in a way, anti-inspirational. Just like, get over yourself, right? Like, recognize that that you're probably not a robber baron, or or a nicer way of putting whatever that is. If you are, you should actually just go do that. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to make a difference. Actually, so to be slightly more inspirational, the genius of our system is that you can make a difference without caring about that at all, right? And you do that by showing up and doing a job in an organization that matters. And like, if you think your organization doesn't matter, ask yourself, what's it still doing there, right? Why does it still work? Like, maybe it's because of fraud or something, but probably not, right? Like, if it persists year after year, decade after decade, it's doing something that makes the world a better place, even if it doesn't get credit for doing so, right? And even if it's several links in the chain away from an organization that does get credit, right? Even if it's getting out competed, it's still a competitive force against some company or organization or firm, or however you want to put it, that has to work better so that it can beat your company that you're not so proud of, or whatever. So, look, again, let go of your pride. Find a way to think about what you're doing in a more optimistic way, because there's lots of reasons for optimism.
Very good points. I always thought Thomas Sowell's ability to dismantle the social justice narrative of the problem is the system, it's designed to oppress you, and there's nothing you can do. So you're right. Why bother showing up for work in this patriarchal white supremacy? That's not going to solve it. You need basically Bolshevism 2.0. We need to seize the capital, more or less. BLM riots need to take place everywhere. The problem is, in the year 800 AD, there wasn't enough rioting and protesting and people with good intentions. That's what the problem was, and that's what we need today. It has nothing to do with productive capacities. But Sowell, of course, refutes this, saying Japanese Americans went from internment camps in the 40s to meeting white incomes in the 1950s. And by 1969, Japanese Americans have had incomes that were 33% higher than the average American family. So people can actually improve their standards of living with hard work, on the job training, looking for opportunities, education in the STEM fields, almost, and of course the philosophy fields as well.
Yes, of course.
If nothing else, I would love for people to buy this book to read pages 73 through 75. It is just such
Oh, right.
a
Yeah,
brilliant,
of course.
it's a brilliant takedown of colonialism that you won't really get anywhere else. I'm going to leave that for the reader. So, what I want to ask you about is the moralizer. All right. I have been called both a moralizer and a busybody. I'm afraid I might be guilty on both charges. So let's go through what it is to be a moralizer. What does that mean? Why is it bad?
Yeah. So, people use this term different ways. We've got a slightly different way. I mean, so it's not to say they're using it wrong or anything like that, but one thing people say is moralizers are kind of people who turn a non-moral issue into a moral one. There's something to that. Other people say it's along the same lines, like applying morality where it doesn't belong. We think so. I mean, there are people who do that, of course. But the mistake that we're kind of interested in here is we think of moralizing as applying morality, not necessarily where it doesn't belong, but where you don't belong, right? So another way of thinking about this is think like, okay, there are all these moral demands, right? Like all sorts of things. If you behave this way, you're a bad person or a good person, right? Surely you can think of some of these demands that should not necessarily be interpersonally enforced, right? So, if you disagree with any one example here, that's fine. There are others, right? But suppose you think that you like owe it to yourself or your ancestors or something like that to like make something of your life. So if rather than doing that, you to a Breaking Bad reference for you, sit around all day eating Cheetos and masturbating, rather than trying to realize your capacities, like do something worthwhile. Like, you're letting yourself down, you're letting your grandparents down, or their grandparents down. It's people who like made great sacrifices to try to make a good life possible for you. But even if that's true, right, that doesn't mean that you should just like get on the bus and like look at people who it seems like are have got the dust on their hands or whatever, and other signs of dysfunction. So what are you doing? Like, get out there and make every ballot issue your business. Go knock on doors or whatever, or even learn some math or learn to code or whatever. Like, this is not a good way to interact with other people. Like, it doesn't make the world better. But look, if you have this, again, really simple picture of what it is to be a good person, and you think that, being an enforcer of morality, as I'm entitled to do because it's so simple and straightforward and it's the most important thing, then it looks like, the only thing that would keep you from doing this is like being too concerned with politeness or which is, it's hard to explain just in like simple moral terms. Right. But our kind of point is they're just, it's just not the case that it's appropriate or even like morally permissible for just anyone to go around saying about any behavior that's plausibly immoral or morally suboptimal or whatever you like, to say to people like, cut it out. Hey, behave this way instead, right? Like, I'll tell you what a better life is. It's not eating Cheetos and masturbating. It's not whatever it is that you're doing. Live this way instead. Right. So one way of thinking about our conflict with the commencement speech moralists is to say, if people can get this idea that it's okay to just like go around being the moral police, then something's going wrong here, right? And what's going wrong is you've got an incomplete picture of how diverse and varied the worthwhile things to do in life are, and even if they don't include some of the more pathetic things we're thinking of in these examples, that doesn't mean that it's then okay for you to go around bossing people around and trying to force even the correct moral view on them, right?
Do you
figure out yourself?
Would you say there's a difference between forcing people, in other words, using the state, or just yourself threatening them with violence or coercion, versus pressuring them or trying to persuade them?
There's a difference. I don't really. So, I mean, I agree with John Stuart Mill, on this sort of thing. So I know this is a libertarian podcast where much of your audience is most concerned about state coercion. I think that's a valid thing to be concerned about. I think social coercion is just as bad, and in some ways more troubling. So Mill says, and on Liberty, paraphrasing, obviously he's not speaking this colloquially, like, look, the state can like interfere with you, and it's pretty bad, right? Like putting you in jail, that's bad. That's a big deal. Society can ruin your life, right? I mean, like, irretrievably ruin your life, right? So someone gets around, like, you behave some way, like there's like this whisper campaign that you don't do the things that like people all think are so important, like they can't trust you. It's if other people interact with you or your friend or do business with you or something like that, then they're also suspects. Like this is to me very troubling. I think actually worse than what the government might do, right? Because you can get by without like relying too heavily on the government. You can't live in at least a modern society and not be able to like transact with people or have friends even, or anyone that you can count on, or even engage in like shallow business with, right? So I would say here's a call to libertarians, like, read your Mill, right? Liberalism is about more than just what the state does, right? You need a society of people who are like tolerant and see it as a virtue to leave people alone, to let them pursue their own conception of the good, right? So if your view of what your tradition is about is restricted to the state, you're missing some really important stuff, in my opinion.
Well, would you say that the people, let's say it took 50,000 people to build the Salisbury Cathedral. Do you have a preference as to whether those 50,000 people built that cathedral or if they stay home and just watch television? or stared out the window? Isn't it okay to have preferences and push
Sure.
them on people to encourage good behavior in society?
Mm. Yeah. So look, I mean, I'm not saying that we should never like talk about values with each other. Of course we should, right? And of course we should have exemplars and praise people for doing good works. Um, and I'm a big fan of human greatness. If I have kids, I want them to do something worthwhile, right? What I think is a mistake is to have too narrow a conception of what is worthwhile. Right? So it's great to work on a cathedral, right? That's awesome. It's great to have an important job. It's great to even you find some way to help the distant needy. Great. What's not okay is to say it's not also worthwhile to just like have 5 kids or to keep a good home, right? Or even to just like go off by yourself and live a quiet life that does not necessarily all the time or maybe even very often lead you to interact with others, right? We need loners too, right? Like being alone, you get important thinking done, right? The life of, I mean, my view of like the good life of a scholar is you should be kind of checked out of certain everyday concerns, right? You should. I'm not saying no one should be like a kind of like public intellectual, but we need people who are not thinking about like the latest election cycle and defending whatever party platform. We need people who are not like trying to be social animals in the way that leads them to try to pander to a certain audience or whatever is like in vogue. We need some distance from stuff like that. So the point is, to go back to the question, there are just so many ways of living a good life, and not just a life that's good for you, a life that's good for the world. Sometimes it's hard to see how that is, but that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. It doesn't mean we shouldn't celebrate it.
One of my biggest busybody moralizing things to do is to tell people about the keto diet because I
Mhm.
lost 110 pounds on it. And I was raised in a time where on the wall of every schoolroom that I was in, you had the president, the
Yep.
Constitution, and the food pyramid.
Pyramid.
And
Yep.
the food pyramid said, make sure you get your
11
11
servings of, yeah,
servings
a lot
of
of slices of
pasta
bread.
and bread.
Yeah.
So everyone in my generation more or less believes that, and that is why we have the current obesity epidemic that we do. Okay, we have it because people bought into the info and made the decision to follow it. Let's blame people individually. I literally did not know why I was 290 pounds. I said, I eat a low fat diet and I exercise. I guess I need to eat a lower fat diet and just keep
Yeah.
doing what I'm doing. Just more Jill Stein logic. It hasn't worked. Quick, double down on what hasn't worked. On the food pyramid, I'm a little pushy. And by that, I mean, I mention it to every heavy person that I come across for 30 seconds. I don't obsess over it. I don't threaten them. I don't say I'm going to Amish shun you for 20 years from society. I mention it so I can bring the horse to water. And then I do advocate libertarianism, which is just people don't have double standards for politicians and corporations or any other organization. Is there anything really wrong with what I'm doing?
Well, first of all, man, good for you. That's really awesome. Well,
Thank
about
you.
the keto thing. Anyway, or is it keto or keto? So I've done this too, and I still don't know how to say this word, and I'll probably forget.
So it's pronounced keto. And for those
Keto.
of you
Okay.
who didn't watch early episodes of the show, I just want people to see what the difference is because you can see why I'm so obsessed with hating doctors that took thousands of my dollars and wasted untold hours of my scarce opportunity cost life on this earth. This is what I used to look like. I'm the whale on the right here, for those of you watching on screen. And then This was me at the Mises conference. Now, okay, this is what Robin Hanson would say. Keith, you're just trying to increase your social status. Whatever, Robin. Whatever. Okay, I'll say that. I don't want anyone to be fooled as long as I was on this thing. That's why I'm so passionate about it. That's why I bring it up.
Hell yeah, man! I watched part of your episode with Mike Humor, and Mike, like I know Mike a little bit. He like on his own remarked like, you look very different. So I hadn't seen a picture for you before, and I thought this guy must look extremely different for Mike Humor to say something like that. So hey, that's awesome, and I can understand, you do make a change that makes that big a difference in your life. You want to tell people, and you know what, like, I don't want my book to like make people think you shouldn't do that, right? Like, you should talk to people about even like pretty personal stuff, like their diet and weight. Like, sure, but you should also remember, like, lots of people have got at least what they think is a story about how they came to Jesus on some issue, right? Like, and it's not even going to be necessarily something like your case where it's like, look, I know exactly what happened here, and it can make a difference for other people. So this. It's funny. Some people get really mad when I talk about this book because they want me to give like, one size fits all advice and be like, no, never do this, never do it, always do this or that. And that's just kind of not what the book is, So I'm happy with the result of just saying, like, if what you take away from the book is like, look, keep in mind, other people have different goals. Like, maybe some people, the keto diet like wouldn't work so well for them. Or whatever, or they're not in a place in their life where they want to talk about that, or there's something else going on, or as long as you remember stuff like this, and there's a very much aligned, like how hard you should push, like, I think that's enough of a corrective for me. But because remember, like, we tell this story in the book. There's this case of somebody, I forget, it's just some like park in Canada. They see someone breastfeeding, and they like start this like online flame war. I'm forgetting some of the details, but so like there's an initial wave of like going crazy about people breastfeeding in public, and then like there's this wave in response of people like, how dare you ever tell anyone like what they do, and so kind of would just like people to realize, like, this is not really productive. The fact that you think morale, like, because the mistake is people hear, they're like, oh, well, this is a moral issue, and that means I'm kind of like indemnified against complaints of going too far, right? Because I'm doing something good here, and that's just wrong, right? Like, it's costly to enforce morality. So actually, there you go. If you want, like, the soundbite version of the views, like, all of this stuff has costs, right? It's not free to push someone around, even if you are exactly right, and even if they might thank you later. Like, it's annoying, right? It's presumptuous, or can be, so morality is not magic. Right? It's a social technology like anything else, and be careful about how you use it.
I definitely agree with what you mentioned about Hayek and the dispersed knowledge thesis. That kind of is my justification for, hey, there are people I don't want anyone to read as much about the minimum wage as I have. I just want them to know that it hurts people with the least amount of skills and experience, and it violates the right of people to voluntarily contract. That, I feel, is a great way. This sort of busybodying allows us to communicate really complex ideas in a real simple way, briefly, and it's not too burdensome. My biggest complaint about the book, which I love and recommend, is that it doesn't differentiate productive unsolicited advice with unproductive unsolicited advice. Um, Did I miss something? Is that a revision that you'll put in the next edition? What, if anything, is wrong about my analysis?
Well, so I mean, maybe tell me more what you mean. So what makes advice productive versus unproductive? Or yeah, that was your distinction, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Productive, I would say, is something within my control that I can reasonably affect, such as show up on time and
Yeah.
ask for additional training. Go to your boss and say, I love this job. I want to be the most valuable employee you have. What can I do if I want to earn X dollars an hour? Unproductive would be, hey man, there's an election coming up. Go get your 1 in 10 million vote, assuming the votes are even counted with those machines. That would be unproductive advice,
Uh-huh.
because there are kids who literally don't know that showing up on time correlates to a higher wage. They have no explanation for what I call the straight white male pay gap. Some straight white males earn a lot of money, some straight white males don't earn a lot and are homeless. So, the social justice warrior who says all disparities are the result of sexism and racism, they can't explain the straight white male pay gap. And the obvious answer is they create different amounts of value because they have different skills. So that is why that is an example of productive versus unproductive, something within my control that I can directly affect.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that all sounds fine to me. I mean, I guess maybe the most like on point thing to say from the book is so philosophers hate stuff like this because we want to to feel like we're like carving nature at the joints all the time, or like to dodge to say, well, hang on, there are like actual practical issues here. But there just is a practical issue, and it's that it is highly personal what is going to actually work out to be productive versus unproductive advice in lots of cases. Now, you pointed to some factors that, like, regardless of how someone feels about what they're about to be told or whatever, like just make it more likely to be productive or unproductive. But right, I mean, I guess this goes to the kind of get over yourself attitude of the book. We're not in a position to know necessarily whether our interventions are going to be productive or unproductive, and so we want to kind of defend the idea, like, the kind of loose, everyday, commonsensical idea, like some things just aren't your business. Like, that is in a way like wise advice, right? Because like, even if you can imagine making a difference, and like, people might come to you later and say, hey, I was pissed off, kind of, it felt like you were being presumptuous or whatever when you told me to like check out the keto diet or whatever it is. Maybe they'll come to you later and say, but I'm glad now that you did it. Like, maybe they will, maybe they won't, right? Maybe people react differently to even well-meaning attempts to set them on a different course, right? Some people dig in, right? They like have the reaction like, well, I'm not gonna I'm intentionally going to like go buy every Snackwell's cookie package, or what are these low-fat cookies? I don't know if they still make these, because that Keith guy just wouldn't let this go. So, every time I see him, it's like, get off those carbs. If what you want is to make the world a better place, sometimes that's just going to mean shutting up and letting people make what seems to you like a mistake, because they got to figure it out for themselves, or they got to hear it from somebody else.
And that's my point about the low opportunity cost. If I said, I support the keto diet, that's why we need to raise taxes and have a new committee and send state officials door to door to, give handouts on the new food pyramid, that would be very imposing. What I'm talking about is literally the 30 seconds I spent this morning at Planet Fitness, making sure that a guy who looks like me 3 years ago knew about it. He goes, I've heard quite a bit about that. No, I haven't looked into it. Thanks. Him and his girlfriend were very nice. By the way, the response that I get from the heavy people that I tell this to has always been positive. The only people are the thin SJWs who are like, "Who are you to tell people you don't know more than doctors do? Put a face mask on and obey the food pyramid."
Yeah.
They're just so pathetic. The fact that I have to compete with these people at all on just on this issue is just ridiculous. Okay, that is my entire small critique of what otherwise was a very very productive book. Is there any big takeaway that you would like people to know about why this book is important? What is it about your thesis that you would like said at the beginning of commencement speeches so people know not to listen too closely?
Mm, boy, what's the big takeaway? Um, I guess I just say don't be afraid to let the most annoying people in the world down. Don't buy the hype, right? Like don't think that the one you're seeing a commencement speech given by a real weird person, right? Who probably like made choices that would be a very bad thing to try to emulate because they have different talents or they just got really lucky or whatever. And you don't have to live a life that ends up with you giving a speech like that to live a great life, and not just for you, right? For your family, for your friends, your community, and for the rest of the world too. It's okay to live an ordinary life. That might even be a better life than one where you have some chance of like being a footnote in history or whatever, because the things that get attention, the things that get you in the national news or whatever, like they might be sexy, but sometimes that's all they are, right? It doesn't mean that those people really made the biggest difference or are actually deserving of the most praise. Um, sometimes the people who are most deserving of like really high praise in your life are people like your grandma or your next door neighbor, right? Like people who are not out to do anything splashy, but the world is much better for them being in it. So it's okay to be like them.
Excellent points. Yes, I what I love about this book is you will see people say, I'm pro education, so that's why I'm very serious about going to the protests and holding up the signs. I will always interrupt them, always without exception. I'll say, "Could you please educate me on any topic of your choice? Because I have a right to education, so don't violate my rights, or you'll be a rights violator and I'll have to perform a citizen's arrest. Can you educate me on anything since it's so important?" And they go, "Well, it's nothing that I can do. I don't really know about, what I should say, but in general, I'm so pro education, I just want to throw more money at the issue." So there seems to be such a divergence between people's ideal and what they can really affect in life. And that's why minding your own business, specializing in something, and trading for the rest in the division of labor is so vitally important. That's why I recommend this book. On the disagreement between conservatism and libertarianism, what is it that I am ignorant about that I need to be enlightened in? You're not overstepping your bounds because I'm asking you.
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know you well enough to say if you're ignorant. I mean, so we were talking a little bit before that this book has some like kind of conservative themes. So we didn't really talk about like which is fine. Some of the stuff on like roots and home. Look, here's what I'll say. I mean, there are a lot of like features of human life that I think there's a tendency among libertarians to think you just get that stuff for free, right? You get the institutions right, you get the incentives right, so get secure property rights in place, and you don't have to worry about culture. You don't have to worry about whether people live virtuous lives or behave the right way with their family or whatever. And like, I think there's something to that, right? Because if you stress those things too much, you can get kind of the opposite problem of trying to centralize, how we approach thinking about roots and community and family. But those things just do matter, and they are not automatic, right? So we talk about this in the book because we think it's a real problem that in our society, it is pretty low status to think about building a good home for your family, right? Or just thinking I shouldn't be moving around every 10 years. The fact that I can make more money some other place or be closer to the action or whatever, that might be true, but also it has a cost, right? Again, part of this is for you, right? Like it's people are happier when they can like plan out a life in one place and put down roots. But it's also costly for these communities, right? To have, there's a kind of brain drain problem. There's a kind of, there's a worry. Eventually, we're not going to nourish the kind of people who like live good lives in communities that sort of die out, right? Because they think, well, in order to live a good life, I need to leave this flyover area or whatever, the city of merely 800,000 people or whatever to go to New York or whatever. You should recognize, I guess, want people to know, like you've been nourished by a place, right? You have been brought up in a place that had value because other people like did their part there, and they cared about that community. And I'm not saying never leave your hometown, never take a better job, but one way of thinking about a good life is being in a place where you give back, right? To like specifically the place that you owe something to. So yeah, I guess I would just say, if your way of thinking about like moral and social and political philosophy is just about whether people's rights are respected, that's important, but it's also important to be a part of something bigger than just your family and just your organization, and to leave people alone. There's more to life.
I agree with that 100%. I just tackle on the non-aggression principle to that, and that's why I'm a libertarian. I absolutely love those family values. My favorite Tom Woods book is How the Catholic Church Built Western Civilization because I see it as a great institution creating alternative to any monopoly on violence. Any specific areas of disagreement where you're on the conservative side when it comes to maybe a specific policy or a specific argument? I want to make sure that I'm enlightened enough before I keep moralizing around the world.
Yeah. So I guess I'd say, so, this is an area, actually, I know there's people are like working on this right now. I need to read more about it too myself. I think there's stuff that libertarians say about like creative destruction, this term, like you just like have to, like, it's good for things to fail sometimes. I think there's an important truth in that. There's also like, you can be a little too blasé about that, right? So this is a very conservative attitude, I know, but even if something is suboptimal, right? Even if maybe like more important forms of progress require something to fail, I think it's important to recognize like it is still a loss for the people who like
Yes.
organize their life around, well, to be somewhat redundant, like a certain way of living, like a set of traditions that eventually lose their place in the world. Now you can obviously take this too far. Like you see this, like some things like, I was just thinking about this, like the Asimoglu stuff on AI. Like, no, it's automation. Like, we got to fight automation and redirect development away from things that'll upset, the current job market or whatever, or exactly what he says. You can get silly with this, but even then, there's a grain of truth to this. You talk to people who have like been in the same trade or something for like several generations. Like, I don't think it's stupid for those people to feel a real loss and feel threatened when it looks like that's not a viable line of work anymore. Now, that is not to take like a political position necessarily, but yeah, I guess I'll just to repeat, it's not stupid to value the way things have been.
You are totally correct on that, and libertarians have completely screwed up the opportunity to communicate with people and concede on that ground that something is lost when traditions and certain ways of life are completely uprooted by technological progress. Absolutely something we should sympathize with much more. Mr. Tosi, thank you so much for your time. The book is Why It's Okay to Mind Your Own Business. Links will be in the description below. Mr. Tosi, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Keith. This is really great. Thank you for reading the book. Thanks for helping me get the word out. And yeah, I hope we can speak again.